All right, what is up, AGB? I got a good friend joining us tonight. My main man, Dillon Martinez. He's a former collegiate athlete, and he is currently the director of adaptive physical education program at Winona State University. We are so excited to have him on the show tonight with us. Dillon, what is up, my guy? How we doing?
Oh, let's go. This has been a long time in the making. I'm so excited. This is going to be a blast.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely, it is. So, for those of you that are watching, they don't know you, Dillon. Little intro: who is Dillon Martinez, and why we bring you on the show tonight?
Man. So, like JB said, I teach at Winona State University. I'm the director of the Adaptive Physical Education Teacher Preparation Program. I also teach in the coaching minor program and then just general physical education program as well. So, all of that to say is I teach future teachers how to be really good at teaching, which is definitely a skill. Just because you know something really well doesn't mean it translates to you being able to teach other people that thing really well. So it's called pedagogy. It's the science of teaching, and that's what we teach future teachers how to do and implement to their future students in an effective manner.
Man, if that doesn't get you excited to learn, I don't know what.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah, I'm thinking, when do I enroll? Like, how do I get involved in
right.
that?
Yeah.
So Dillon, you are my age, right? And you're already back working at the university level. There's something about you that I've known from the beginning. You always love learning.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Talk to us about that and how that's played a role in your life, starting like going back to your sports and playing career.
So my dad is also a professor. He actually works in the office right next to me, which is so cool. He's the chair of our program. But from a very early age, a quote that he used to say all the time is, know something about everything and everything about something. And I just saw him actually live that out in the most practical means possible. Anytime that he thought something was interesting or cool, he learned everything there was to know about that thing, even if it wasn't something that he traditionally grew up with. For example, he is a brown man, and his dad is also a brown man. We're Hispanic, and so they didn't grow up hunting. And when my dad tried to get my grandpa to go hunting with him, my grandpa said, "Well, I'm not going to go hunting ever." And my dad's like, "Well, why?" And my grandpa's like, "Well, what color are the deer?" And my dad's like, "Brown." And he goes, "Same with me. I'm not going hunting." So that didn't stop him. So that's like all that to say, he knows so much now that he didn't know because it was just something that he grew up with. And that is something that he has passed on to me. And I am infectiously curious about literally anything. I will get excited about learning about anything and everything. But one of the ways in which that click that it's very important is I feel like I can have a conversation with anybody, because usually when you have a conversation with somebody, it's around things that you both have general or concurrent interests in. And if I know something that JB knows also about, we can instantly have some sort of bond and connection over that shared interest. So the broader your interests are, the broader your ability to make meaningful connections, I have found come into play. All of that leading into my current role as a soon to be professor. May 30th, 2025, I'll finish my doctorate degree. Not that I'm counting. But all of that has been instilled with me and my dad is know as much as you can about as much as you can. And then through that, you're going to make some really cool, meaningful connections along the way.
That's awesome, man. You know, we talk so much about confidence on this channel, right? We talk so much about it at AGB. And one of the things that we emphasize that, you know, JB, it's not one of our C's, but it's woven into it when we talk about competence is you got to be curious, right? And you just use that word. And so many people think that confidence comes on the back way of what you know. But we teach it's actually the other way around. Confidence comes by you saying, I want to know. I want to listen. I want to open myself up to the world to teach me and be curious in every situation that you're in. And that helps so much in sports too. You know, how many times does a player go into a particular season thinking they already know how to be successful,
right?
Versus being extremely curious as to how can I get better in this system, you know, with this coach and these teammates, because every year is a new year. So I love that you emphasize curiosity right off the bat.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, like you said, confidence is really important. And I'm sure we'll talk about that later. But I feel like I'm confident enough in who I am to know that if I fail, it's all going to be okay.
Yeah.
You know, and I feel like if you have that kind of confidence, you can go into anything aggressively and with full confidence that you will pull through, but also full confidence in knowing that if it doesn't work out, it's all good. It doesn't work out.
It's huge.
Absolutely. So you just talked on something a little bit like failure. Looking back on your life and your stretch to get to like where you're at, when you think of that word failure, how do you apply it to your life?
That's a really good question. That's a really good question. I think, wow, I don't know. I feel like I have such like a mindset of like failure doesn't really happen. It's just like a chance for you to grow. I know that sounds corny, but I've been so incredibly blessed, like to not have to endure such failure. So for example, I think if somebody were to like know my whole story, they would look at it and say, well, you didn't get to finish playing college football. That's a failure. But it led to me getting to marry my wife sooner. And then we've been able to do all these incredible things in our marriage before now we have kid in 2 months. So I don't really see that as a failure. You know what I mean?
So would you say if someone's out there thinking failure, zooming out the lens?
Zoom out.
So did you feel failure in that time of when you were done with football? Or are you saying that other people potentially look at that as a failure?
Yeah, I could see other people saying like, oh, you only played a year and a half of college football.
Yeah.
Well, it was due to injury, and I definitely could have got a medical red shirt. But at that point, it's like, I'm not going to the league. You know what I'm saying? So like, am I going to continue this, or am I going to marry this girl who I think is the best human in the world? So it was just a chance for me to pivot. And looking back at my life, every chance that I've gotten like that to pivot, God has just led me in the correct direction. And it's been such a blessing. So super cliche, but I don't really feel like I've come up against too many failures, because I feel like the place that I'm in right now is exactly where I'm supposed to be. And I feel like a failure would mean you're derailed from where you're supposed to be. So I don't really feel like I'm not where I'm supposed to be, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that's a beautiful perspective, man.
How do you guys feel about? I like this topic is fascinating to me. So I just want to stay on it for just a second. Both of you, I want to ask both of you, how do you guys feel about actors who only get to commercials?
Right? Commercials feel like crazy.
Right? So
Yeah.
like the AT&T girl or the Progressive Insurance, Flo, right? I mean, she spent her entire career on commercials. I saw her once, an old show that I used to watch back in the day, House, right? Doctor who was really rude to people.
Yes, I love that show.
Mhm.
So I saw Flo on House, 15 years ago. And so that tells me that she went to Hollywood to be an actress, right? And instead, she's not in movies. She's not Julia Roberts, right? But she's on this commercial. But like, you know who she is. Like, think about that face. You know who I'm talking about.
Exactly.
So is she a failure?
No.
So if she's trying to get into the Oscars and hang out with Leo DiCaprio, right? Maybe she's, right? But when you talk about someone who went to Hollywood to make it, she made it. And I like thinking about that because in sports we do that. Like you talk about, okay, what didn't you do in college? You played college sports. Let's just think about all the people who've never done that.
Exactly.
So that's my little tangent.
Yeah. Like when you said the Progressive girl, like we knew exactly who you were talking about.
Yeah,
I think that's success in and of itself.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
And I would say too, like like as you're out there, like, shooting for Hollywood, shooting for, D1, whatever your Hollywood is, like it, as cliche as that is like you set that at like what your bar is the highest, and like you will find who you are throughout that process. And like it opens up like, and like Dillon, you're saying that like it's clear to you now, like you're supposed to be where you're at right now in this season of life. So, I think there's a huge component of faith in there too, which I know you're a big man of faith and you lead with faith. And so hearing you talk and the words you do use, you can definitely hear it in there.
Yeah.
So getting into this little program that you've been working on, Get F.A.S.T.
Yes,
Right. I wanna unpack this a little bit because it ties in what we've just been talking about, like everything who you are, what you're doing right now, and this continued learning. And Rick and I talk about this with AGB all the time, is like, your job isn't done once you become confident. Once you become confident, your job is now to pour out confidence into others, right? And teach others to be confident. And so how are you applying everything you've done up to this point to, this cool new adventure that, you did start this last summer?
Yeah. So I think the turning point for me when it comes to confidence in athletics started when I was in high school. I was fortunate enough to have my defensive back coach be Craig Newsome. He played for the Packers and he won a Super Bowl with them. He had a pick in the Super Bowl. He was my defensive backs coach. It was so cool to be able to work with him in this tiny little town that I grew up in. And it was the first game my sophomore year, and we were running onto the field. And he like pulled me, grabbed my face mask, and he said, "You need to believe that you are the baddest man on this football field." And I was like, word. And that just stuck with me for the rest of my career as a defensive back. Because as a defensive back, like whether you're in high school or in college, it is a hard position and you are going to get toasted. And how are you gonna come back from that? And the way you come back from that is knowing that you are the baddest man on that field. And that confidence that he instilled in me from day one. He's like, I got mossed by Jerry Rice. And he would just like tell stories about going up against the greats. And he's like, but I knew I was the baddest man on that field. And I was like, that's so cool. So how can I implement that type of confidence, not in the football field, but just in life in general? So from that, I was like, why am I confident on the football field? Well, again, in my small pond, I was faster than everybody else. So I didn't have to really spend a lot of time thinking. I could just react and know that my God-given abilities were going to allow me to make plays that other people couldn't, because they couldn't keep up with me. So to me, speed and being fast allowed me to be confident in the sport that I was playing. Again, I was very blessed because my dad, again, is a professor and is an incredible coach, really took the time to teach me how to sprint and how to move properly from a young age. And I quickly realized that not everybody gets that. And I quickly realized, specifically now in my role as a physical education teacher preparator, that we don't teach PE teachers how to teach sprinting. We teach them how to teach running to little kids, but running and sprinting are two completely different skills. One is a very specialized skills that we apply in a gameplay setting, and one is a general skill that you can just go out and do. They're very different. And the way that these skills are, like the critical elements of each skill, of these two skills, are very different as well. And PE teachers are taught to teach running, and then it is just assumed that we'll be able to bridge that gap with athletes, then they can sprint as well. And that's just not the case. I've worked with third graders and I've worked with guys getting ready for their pro days to run the 40. And if you put them side by side, they look the exact same mechanically. Sprinting is not taught. So I've created this Get Fast Speed Coaching certification course to teach coaches how to teach the specialized skill of sprinting to any athlete of any age, of any competency level. It's not just a track program. I am a track coach, and coaching track is my favorite sport to coach. Football is my favorite to play. So I'm not just trying to create track athletes. I'm trying to create very fast alignment. I'm trying to create volleyball players who are more confident when they're going up to spike the ball or can move more efficient laterally or whatnot. The certification that I've created isn't just for straight line speed. It is for speed in general. And my goal with it, the tagline is Get Fast, making all coaches speed coaches. I want to make self-sufficient speed coaches that don't need to keep going to conferences over and over again, because we have given them everything that they need to implement and create their own speed programs that can be implemented 365 in the schools that they are currently in.
Very cool, man. Hearing you talk about that, one, you can definitely tell you're passionate about it. So, one, if you're out there in the market, definitely Get Fast in your program you want to bring to your school. And
Yes.
it's going to be something, I firmly believe, AGB included, right? Get Fast,
Yes.
like there's a change coming to high school athletics.
Yes.
And we are putting pressure on, providing the best environment for these, student athletes. It's because, when we look back, I know both of you are the same, like we want to provide better from when we were going through it.
Right.
So,
Absolutely. And we've done, so last summer was our first like soft launch, I think is what you say in the business, right, JB?
yeah.
And so we did all in-person Get Fast certifications. So we did them in Wisconsin, We did them in Minnesota, and we did one in Colorado as well. And we had so much fun. And I'm like, okay, this is a thing that coaches want. So this last year, I've been creating an all online version. So that's what we're going to be rolling out here, hopefully in the next 20 days.
That's awesome. Why did you, I'm fascinated by this. Why did you choose to spend more of your time on teaching the teacher as opposed to just saying, here's a program directly to the athlete? Listen to me, watch my video, go get fast. Why did you decide to go the route of teaching the teacher to teach the athlete?
That's a great question. And it's something that I've spent a lot of time thinking about as well. I think the most powerful, and I think you guys would agree with me, one of the most powerful entities in a school is the coach. And I don't want to outsource that influence to myself when I'm not the person that is in that building.
Right.
I want the coaches that are in that building to be seen as the master of their domain as it pertains to athletics. And I want their athletes to look at them saying, that coach cares so much about me that he is doing more to ensure that he can offer me the best experience possible as an athlete. And I want to give coaches the confidence to be able to do that, because I think we owe it to our athletes to do that. But I don't want to be the guy that their athletes are looking to, if that makes sense.
That's an awesome answer. And I can tell you, as an athletic director who works at a university, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, especially at university, I think at a high school, it pertains at a high school too, because when you're the coach at the high school, everyone is coming to you already, but you are the central figure that they are coming to.
Right.
When you're a coach at the university, you are the central figure that's going out to draw them to you, right? And so it's so important that you are seen as the supreme voice on the subject. I always tell assistant coaches all the time, your job is to make the head coach look good. If you have an assistant coach that's like competing with the head coach for attention and loyalty with the players, that can be very destructive. So I love that you get that, and you're not even necessarily in these programs. You're just saying, as a general, let me move out of the way and help you help your team. It's beautiful, man.
Thank you.
So out of the schools that you've done this last summer, Dylan, talk to us about like that in-person experience, and how you hope to like craft and hone that into the online experience. Because Rick and I have had numerous conversations on like it's not an easy thing to do to keep everyone engaged online only. And so as you make that shift, how are you going to take like what you guys did do in person?
I think more so than anything, coaches want to know how to systematize speed training 365 days a year. A lot of the coaches that we have talked to said we have a great off-season summertime training program. And then once school starts and once sports starts, everything kind of falls off. So what we offer is a system that you can plug and play all of these different things that we're going to teach you into. And as long as you do step 1, step 2, and step 3 correctly, you will have a beneficial speed session, no matter if it's in season or out of season. So we're answering a really big stressor, or we're fixing a stress point in the life of a coach, knowing that basketball practice isn't just basketball practice. Like, we're still trying to make well-rounded athletes within the context of the basketball season. Because once basketball is over, they're track athletes now, usually in the high school, right? Or baseball players, softball players. And I think a lot of coaches could benefit from like understanding specifically at the high school age, they're not just football players, they're not just basketball players, right? They're student athletes in this one school. And the better that our entirety of our athletics can be, the better that is going to reflect on our high school. So if we all head coaches can come together and be like, okay, what is the shared language we can all use all year long as it pertains to speed training that our athletes are going to know automatically when they come to practice? Here's what they can expect. We're going to spend 15 minutes every day on speed work, or maybe even 3 days a week on speed work all year long. So now speed is not just relegated to summer. Speed gets detrained in 3 days of non-focused work. Strength gets detrained in about 2 weeks of non-focused work. Whereas if you ask a coach what the most important thing is, well, we need to be in the weight room all the time. Very important, but speed goes away quicker than strength goes away. And yet strength is what is most predominantly focused upon. So I'm trying to, and most people don't know that, which is not their fault. You can't blame somebody for not knowing something.
But are they twins, Dylan? Like, are they cousins? Do I need them both?
You do.
Can I develop speed if I'm not in the weight room?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. predominantly through technique correction, but also through the type of stimulus that is afforded to your body when you're sprinting. Sprinting is the most taxing thing you can do on your central nervous system. Sprinting is the best plyometric you can ever do. So if you go on like Instagram and you see all these people doing these wild plyometric movements, then you go try to replicate them. Just go sprint 5 times as fast as you can with 5 minutes of rest in between, and that will be all you ever need as far as plyometrics go. Obviously, it's fun to change things up, move in different directions, but if you're just trying to get faster and build your explosiveness, sprinting is going to be the best way that you can do that.
That's awesome.
So sprinting is the best way, to build. How do you incorporate sprinting into a workout? I was able to, get boots on the ground and witness a private workout session you did do. And there's one thing you'd always incorporate, and I'm gonna see how you answer it. But how do you go about doing that?
So if let's say it's a basketball team, for example, and they're going to lift before they have practice. They're going to come in, they're going to do 15 minutes of speed work, they're going to lift, and then they're going to go to practice. Speed always comes before lifting because you want to do the most taxing thing on your central nervous system first, and that is speed work. So you want to do the fastest movements, and then you're going to go ahead and do the slower movements. And then that thought process doesn't necessarily translate to lifting, but as far as your central nervous system, you want to sprint before you lift, because as much as possible, when you sprint, you want to be as fresh as you can be, because you don't want any fatigue in your system to impact your technique, because any impact in your technique when you're sprinting could lead to injuries, and we don't want that.
What are your thoughts, Dillon, on the tech that's out there? Are you using high tech? Are you doing, the light trainings, the reactions? I see a lot of that stuff in the basketball space, in the boxing space.
Yeah.
Are you using that stuff, or you think that stuff is chachi?
Oh no, I think it's great. For 2 reasons. One, I think specifically I use a lot of timing systems. So I use Dasher and I use Freelap. Freelap is a microchip based timing system. And Dasher is a laser-based timing system, which I just got and I love, and I use it literally 3 times a day. It's so much fun. But anytime that you can use tech to enhance your training session, it's going to do a couple things. One, it's going to make it more fun because everybody likes gadgets. And then 2, it's going to be a data collecting machine to drive meaningful changes within your programming. If you collect your maxes like in the weight room all the time, right? So let's also do that in our speed work as well. And the best way to do that is with timing techniques, because you can use a stopwatch all you want, but at the end of the day, it's not going to be very accurate. But as far as like reaction stuff, I haven't done too much work with that. The best technique or the best technology I've learned with reaction is just the coach saying right or left or back or something like that. Because when you're trying to train agility and when you're trying to train change of direction, they're 2 different skills. And you got to know that they are different. So change of direction is a pre-planned movement, whereas agility is a stimulus-based movement. So the way I like to explain it to people is agility is the defensive back, whereas change of direction is the receiver. The receiver knows what route they're going to run. So that's change of direction. So in order to train change of direction, you need to know when you're going to change direction and then help build that pathway neurologically. Whereas to help build your neurological pathways for agility, you can't know what's about to happen and you just need to be able to react. And that's how you get better at agility.
Very cool. Awesome.
I'm ready to go in. You got one? Because I'm ready to go into that space that I want to go into about the timing of it all.
Yeah, get us. Well, before we do go there,
Okay.
Specific, JB. What were you asking?
Yeah, you did say it, but one thing I just will applaud you because I follow Dillon on Twitter too, and I've just been observing how he teaches and coaches because I always want to get better how I communicate. I think he's a great communicator. But one thing you always do, or you try to incorporate fun into your workouts.
Oh
right?
yes,
and you've done a variety of different ways, and you do some cool videos, and stuff, but like using Eddie's, facility and whatnot, like it's been cool to see you kind of like take that word, but not only just like apply it and like apply it in so many different ways. Like you have a fun catalog of different workouts like for coaches to put into their sessions, right? So talk to me about why that's so important.
So I have the system that we teach is called the 3 T's, and it's tech, time, and tourney. And technique is just technique of sprinting. Time is the portion of the workout where we're going to time something, no matter what it is, no matter what day it is. We're going to get data, and timing stuff is the best way to elicit effort. If you want a kid to do something for you when a little kid to do something for you, what are you going to say? You're going to say, if you just said, can you go grab that for me? They're not going to do it. But if you say, can you go grab that for me? I'll time you. They're going to do it. Same thing with high school kids. Same thing with pro athletes, college athletes. If you time something and give them a metric to beat in the next rep, it's going to raise intent like crazy. But finally, that last piece, and the thing that I'm most proud of, is something called tourney. And that's where we end every speed session with some sort of speed game. And the speed game that we play is going to be dependent on the timing thing that we were focused on for that day. So if we were working on linear speed, the game we play is going to be linear speed predicated. If it's lateral speed we're working on, same thing. We're going to play a game that allows the athlete to work on the skills in an authentic environment that we were just working on a second ago when we were timing. So ending the speed session on a high note with fun and activity, and then working on that skill in an authentic environment is going to really fuse neurologically the stuff that you just taught them, because now they're working on it in real time in an environment that actually allows them to work on the thing we just talked about in a competitive, open environment rather than a closed environment.
That's so smart. And it's smart for all of you coaches out there. It's smart, period, because the thing that most athletes remember on their way home is the last thing that happened.
For
right?
sure.
The last thing that happened is the one that you're thinking about when it's time to come back the next time. So I always encourage coaches to end their practices with something fun. It's just it's massive. So okay, when is it like I could start my 7-year-old on this stuff right now, or is there a time in which it is more ideal? Because I know for a fact, like if I had a strength guy on here, I shouldn't say that because I want to be curious, I want to learn. But if a strength guy tried to tell me that I need to lift weights with my 7-year-old, I'd tell him I need some serious data to prove that, because I'm not interested in doing that.
Right.
So a speed guy, talk to me, educate me as a parent. When's the best time for me to get involved with my kid doing speed training?
As soon as possible, because you want to allow your student, I always say, you want to allow your kid to develop the correct technique as soon as possible. So by the time they get to me, when they're, let's say, having a pro day, I don't have to retrain their whole body on how to move more efficiently. Specifically, if I could tell parents, like the number one thing to look for with their own kid as it pertains to speed development is their arms. The number one problem I see as it pertains to sprinting is their whole body rotating and their arms crossing the midline when they're trying to go that direction. I tell the kids all the time, which direction are we trying to go on a linear day? And they're like, straight ahead. And I'm like, why is your whole body moving this direction? We're not trying to go that way. We're trying to go that way. So one of my favorite cues is I want you to brush your pockets with your palms. And this is going to help your hands not cross your midline as you're sprinting. But no one has ever taught this, because usually when we run, specifically as just like a light jog pace, we are a little bit more side to side with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas when we're sprinting, if you watch high level elite sprinters, it's just like a sports car, right? They're trying to be as efficient as possible. So everything is in one direction, straight forward, this direction. There's nothing going side to side. This is all wasted movement. So if I had a 7-year-old, the first thing I would do is make sure when they are running in a straight line, that they are running in a straight line and there's no wasted movement going side to side. So the sooner you can fix that side to side, the better you're going to set them up for their entirety of their athletic career, I think.
I think every parent who's watching this just saw their kid running, like when you did that.
Right?
So I just want you to know, because my kids, I'm watching him. He's pretty quick for his age and everything like that, but he does that. He's got a little bit of a waddle to what he's doing.
Right.
And you're right. Had you not said anything, I wouldn't have thought of it. Now I know, I ran track. I know, right? But I wouldn't have thought to teach it in that way, and that's why it's so crucial to learn from the people who are doing the thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
100%. To stay curious over certain, right?
Yeah. Ooh, that's a bar.
Where we need that. Here we go.
Shout out Dave on that one. All right, Rick, you got it. You said you want a section you want to bring us into?
Yeah, that was it. I wanted to know what his time was, but okay. So so you say as soon as possible. Okay, so I'm with you on that. So now we've got uh sophomore in high school who's now decided specifically which sport they want to do. Okay, so I was playing basketball, baseball, and football, but now I'm a sophomore and I'm going to focus on X. Would the training change once you know the sport that they want to be good at?
Not necessarily, because I think the best way to be a really good athlete in your specific sport is to be a really good athlete.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And the best way to be a really good athlete is to be a very proficient mover in all the genres of moving.
Mm-hmm.
And the way you can be a really good mover is by being an efficient mover, which all goes back to what I was just talking about. When you're sprinting, if you can learn how to be an efficient movement when you're sprinting, which is the most ferocious activity that the human body does, you can easily extrapolate that to other movements. So if we can help our students and our kids be good sprinters early, they're going to be better movers broadly as they get older. So then we're not going to have to retrain movement patterns that they had been ground into their CNS from a young age. Does that kind of make sense?
It makes a ton of sense. Makes a ton of sense. And I mean, I've seen it, right? I've seen it with my own two eyes, just watching people that will play multiple sports, and you can see the fluidity in their movement kind of translates no matter which sport they're doing. And I would imagine there's something to the science of your body position as well, not just a straight, but low man wins. Is that universally true, or is there something to the uprightness of sprinting?
Yeah. So if you watch, let's say when Usain Bolt broke the world record in the 100-meter dash, sprinting is when you're at max velocity, is a vertical power based movement. It's not a horizontal based power movement. The first about 60 meters of the 100-meter dash is vertical, but once you get to, horizontal. But once you get to that max velocity stage, you're putting force straight into the ground, and you're hoping that the gravity is going to allow you to come up. And then the force that you had built previously during that first 60 meters is going to propel you forward. And you're focused on putting as much force into the ground to get you as high into the air as possible vertically, because anytime that our foot is on the ground when we're sprinting, that's friction. And we don't want friction. We want to be like in the air like a bird, flying as much as possible. So spending as much time in an upright position, specifically at max velocity, is going to be very important. And a lot of kids, at least a lot of sprinters that I've worked with, don't know how to get into that fully upright position, because there's not a lot of sports that allow you to get into that fully upright position. But then that translates to, during a fast break, you're still hunched over. And then when you're hunched over specifically at the hips and your hips are pointed down, that's going to not allow you to have a full stride length. And then your center of mass is going to be a little bit too far forward, and your foot is going to land out in front of your center of mass. And then you're going to have to pull yourself over that center of mass using your hamstrings. And that's when you pull your hamstrings, because you're not allowed or allowing yourself to get into that fully upright position. So the positioning, like you said, that kinesthetic awareness and kinesthetic sense is so important to build into athletes at a young age. And a really good way to do that, I'm going to beat the drum again. A really good way to do that is learn how to be aware of your body while you're doing the most aggressive thing that our body does, which is sprinting.
Love that. So you were talking earlier, Dillon, it takes about 2 days to start to lose some of that sprinting work, right? And so as you're going to these schools and implementing a 365-day program, what does that consistency look like from a sprinting-based program like throughout the year? So like to our athletes, talking to our athletes out there, you know, what does consistency look like in the world of sprinting?
So in a track season, so I'm a track coach. I coached the fastest kid in the state of Wisconsin last year, which was a blast. And we had 3 speed days a week. So we had 2 rest days where we did like field events or whatnot. But we had 3 days a week that was just primarily speed focused work. We hit top speed about 4 times in that day, and then we shut it down. So if you're not a track athlete, try to hit top speed on at least 2 separate days, at least 4 times within that day. Does that kind of make sense? So if you're looking at a week, let's say your speed days are Monday and Thursday. On Monday, I know when I get up in that morning, today's a speed day, I'm going to hit my top speed 4 times in that day. In between those 4 reps, you're going to have at least 5 minutes of rest. You want full rest so that energy system can replenish. And you're going to do 4 of those. You want a really good warm up. I hate the word warm up, by the way. We can get into that later if you want. But You're going to get a full warm-up, and then you're going to do 4 full-speed reps with 5 minutes of rest in between, and then that's going to be your speed day. And then you're going to do the same thing on Thursday. And then maybe the next week, instead of 10-meter flies, maybe you're doing 20-meter accelerations. And just change it up that way. Maybe you're doing curvilinear sprints. You don't got to go in a straight line all the time. Maybe you're doing a 5-10-5. But the biggest thing is to hit top speed at least 4 times in a day, 2 separate times in that week, all year long. And that's the best way that you're going to keep your speed trained adequately.
Well, I know enough about podcasts to know that no one else is going to listen to anything else we say until you explain why you hate warm up. so let's get that out of the way right now, because that's all I'm thinking of right now.
Okay. So we were all athletes, right?
Yep.
We would walk out to the field, we would walk out to the court, and the coach would say, "All right, let's warm up." And what did your brain do? Yeah, exactly. It was like, okay, I'm about to do the thing I have to do before we do the important thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
And I that to me, that's wasted time mentally. So I don't use the word warm up anymore. I use the word tech. I say, all right, it's tech. And tech is I front load it with my athletes before the season starts. And I say, when I say it's time for tech, practice is starting now. This is going to be a fundamental aspect of what we do. If we don't do this portion of the day with full neurological and physical intent, the rest of what we do isn't going to matter. This might be the most important thing that we do all day long. So I need you all to be locked in from the jump. And like the kids will be talking, I'll say, all right, tech. And it's just like zoom, and they're ready to go. But as coaches, we need to front load that, and we need to expect that from our athletes. And I know when I was an athlete, and even when I was a coach, before I started thinking this way, I would be like, even as a coach, I would dread the warm up and be like, I hate that we have to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But a lot of times, like a warm up can be 20 minutes long. That's 20 minutes of lackadaisical, non-focused movement that we're just doing because we feel like we have to before we do the important thing.
That's such a good point. I remember I hated the mundane pointlessness of any warm-up. Like I remember one of the warm-ups I had at every basketball practice during one particular coach's tenure was the around my head, around my waist, around my knee. And I was just like, this is so stupid. Like I don't do this in the game. So I don't want to do this. I'd much rather my warm-up be, working on getting my elbow off my hip, or working on pounding. And like when I coach now, my warm-up is the way we dribble. We get very intentional about driving the ball through the floor, so that it's a very mental exercise of feeling your complete arm lock with every dribble. That way when you start playing later, and I emphasize pound the dribble, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, for sure. That makes so much sense.
But you also used a phrase there that all my coaches and teachers are like, yeah, they just flowed with us. But go back and explain what front loading is for those that don't know.
So front loading is telling somebody what you're going to teach them before you teach it to them. So it's just kind of getting their mind ready for what you're about to tell them. What's happening? Oh no.
You're good.
I was getting a phone call.
Oh, Gucci.
Why is my phone?
Yeah, and that is such a huge concept for all things coaching. Like when you could use it in like, okay, like right now I'm about to teach you X, right? But you could also use it in, hey, it's the first day of practice, and I can tell you this is what you're going to get from me this season. These are the things that we're going to emphasize, and front loading that way when you're building team culture is so huge, because you get the buy-in early, and then later on when it's time to reference it, you can say, hey, we talked about this from the very beginning. I told you this was coming. This is an emphasis of our culture, as opposed to, it's practice 10, and then all of a sudden you're saying you were at the water fountain too long. Well, I didn't know that the water fountain too long was a problem.
That was an expectation, right?
Yeah. So I love that. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, front loading is so important, and I love that you just brought that water fountain thing up. You can never, as a coach, get mad at a kid for something they didn't know they weren't supposed to do.
Yep.
I feel like teachers as well. And these days, you'd be surprised as to how specific you need to be about the things that you expect them not to do. Because they can just be like, I really didn't think that would be an issue. And you're like, how could you think that? But at the end of the day, you got to take some extreme ownership, like Jocko says, And you got to understand that you didn't lay that line thick enough. And
Yeah.
ultimately, that's on you, and you need to wear that and do a better job next time.
Yep. JB and I are huge on the bridging of the generation gap, right? It's one of the fundamentals of AGB coaching. And so the reason why him and I are partners, right? Like different generations, but same mindset. So let's go. And that's one of the things that we're always talking about is, you know, doing this whole, this generation thing. It's getting so lame. We have to stop doing it. Like these things are not different. We've always been this way, that if you're going to coach someone who's 15, 10, 20 years your junior, then you owe it to them to meet them at half court.
For sure.
You can't expect them to come all the way. I didn't go all the way to my coaches that were like, I walked 10 miles to school. Like, well, I didn't. You know what I mean? So like, I need you to come to where I'm at, where we have a bus. You know what I mean? And so I feel like now that I'm getting older, I still have to do the same thing. Yes, I did not grow up with TikTok, but I'm gonna meet you at half court. You know, I'm not gonna ask you to come all the way to my Mario Brothers. You know what I'm saying? Like it's all the same. So I think front loading is something that you have to do when you're saying, I'm okay with the fact that this generation may have a different attention span. That's fine. So set the expectation and don't expect them to know what you think they should have known.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great.
Love that. So Dillon, being in this teacher role this year, what's one thing that you have learned about utilizing these skills? So like you went to school to learn like how to teach, and now that you're like applying it, what is something that maybe was different or that you just enjoyed specifically about being in that setting?
College kids are so fun to work with. That's like one of the main things is they're grown enough to know, like, okay, this is kind of what I think I maybe want to do. And therefore they're putting that energy to it. That's why they're in my class. But also they're still like curious enough to be like, what else is out there? But then also, the more efficient that I can be as a professor or as an instructor to let them see the possibilities in the teacher role that they might one day be. I try to model that as best as I can. And I think that when I do a really good job of that, it's the best feedback from my students. They're like, oh, I really like how you taught that. And then as soon as I hear them say that, I'm like, you're ready to be a teacher. Because as soon as you can, as a teacher student, be like, there's a reason he said that way, or there's a reason he's assigning these things or having us read these things. I'm like, guys, you're getting it. Because 2 months ago, you would never have noticed that. And they're like, you're right. Yeah. So watching that light bulb moment for these college kids that are going to one day be teachers has been so fun.
That's really cool. How did you come across that gig? That sounds like a gig that was almost like perfectly crafted for you. Like, are you passionate about speed and this sort of thing because of the job, or did the passion lead you to the job?
So technically, my degrees are an undergraduate in physical education. So I was a PE teacher at a small school in Wisconsin for a while, and I also taught health and then adapted physical education as well. And then my master's degree is in adapted physical education. So teaching students with special needs in a physical education setting. And the role I'm in now, the way it came open was serendipitous, which is a word I've never said before.
You pulled it off beautifully.
I got worried when it popped into my head. At Winona State, they needed specifically a master's level instructor who could teach adapted physical education and run our APE program. And I applied and no one else did. So I got the job, and it's been a blast ever since. And then being at a college, they expect you to grow, which is awesome because you need to continually add to your resume. So they want you to publish. So ever since I've been at Winona State University, I've had 4 things published, 1 in the realm of adapted PE and 3 in speed coaching. And they want you to be a jack of all trades within your content area. So again, going back to knowing something about everything, the thing I feel like I know a lot about, obviously not everything, is adapted physical education and teaching people how to work with people with special needs in a movement setting, which if you can teach a student with cerebral palsy how to walk, how much more easily can you teach a fully functional student how to sprint?
Yeah.
If you can if I can teach a PE teacher to teach a kid with cerebral palsy how to walk properly, it's so easy to teach them how to efficiently teach sprinting and other fundamental or basic or even specialized movement skills. So having that background of knowing how to really break movement down makes me so much better as a teacher and as a coach to really specialize movements as well.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And that population is so fun to work with.
Yeah. Man, that's so cool. Talk to us too about getting published. I know just like through that experience of creating something and putting it out there. Yeah.
So the first article that I got published was like a like a think piece, but it was published in JOPERD, which is the Journal of Physical Education, Recreation, and Dance, which is like the foremost journal for physical education in the country. And that was talking about the mindset or the framework that I think from when it comes to training teachers. And I was talking in that article specifically that the first day of any of my classes, my students walk in and I try to be as like bubbly as possible. And I'm like, hey guys, I wanted to be real with you for a second. I want you to know that I don't care what grade you get in my class. I want you to know above all else that I'm like really passionate and I care a lot about you individually and that you mean more to me than the grade that you get in my class. Mm-hmm. And the reason that I chose to write about that was because the first time I said that to a group of high schoolers, they were almost like crying. They're like, we've never had a teacher say that to me before. I just thought I was great in their grade book. And I was like, man, this is something that people need to be doing all the time, whether it be with their athletes or with their students. We need to know first and foremost that we care about them, but they need to know that we care about them. It's one thing for us to know it. It's another thing, or it's entirely for us to convey in a way that they actually get like, okay, this person actually cares about me. Therefore, I think what they would only choose to tell me things that they actually value and they think that will be pertinent to me. Every time I give a homework assignment, I'm like, guys, I promise you I wouldn't just be giving you this homework assignment. Like there's a reason, and I promise you it'll make sense later. And you just got to trust me. But I've already developed that catalyst of trust through saying, I don't care what your grade is. I care about you. And they know that at the end of the day, I care about them. Therefore, I'm only going to help them. And therefore, I'm only going to assign things that actually matter. And therefore, they're going to get much more excited about these things, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and that makes perfect sense to us over here at AGB, right? Because the first step in AGB mentality in the roadmap is what, Rick?
It's the care, man. Care for yourself, but care for others. It's such an opportunity. I think, listen, shout out to anyone who's teaching for a living. Shout out to all of you. I don't care if you are coming across some criticism. I don't care what the parents are saying. If you have chosen to go into the teaching profession, I tip my hat to you. I think it's a phenomenal thing to do for a living. And I think that all of us who are in that craft can learn from what Dillon just said. That we've got to lead with our care. Now, to play devil's advocate on behalf of any teacher who's listening to us, there are some students that will take advantage of that.
For sure.
So the argument against coming off with that sense of vulnerability is that these students don't care. They're still going to run over you. They're still not going to do the homework. They're still going to blame this for doing that. What would you say to that contingency of teacher that says, man, I hear you, kumbaya, but it is not that sweet in my class. These kids are crazy. What would you say to them?
Let them run over you. Okay. And I say that in the college setting specifically, because at the end of the day, college students are paying money to be in your class. So I tell them, I say, first and foremost, guys, I care about you. I don't care about your grade. I want to make sure that you and I are in the same wavelength, and I'm going to help you as much as you want to be helped. But if you come to me on the day before grades are due, asking me what I can do to get an A when you have an F, I'm going to say, dude, this is way too late. So not being afraid to let students fail and not being afraid that that's going to reflect poorly on you. Ultimately, I think if you're babying kids too much, specifically at the college setting, once they get out into the real world, their principal specifically is going to say, where did you come from? Why do you expect so much from me? I thought you were going to be self-sufficient. Aren't you a teacher? I think sometimes we do a disservice to our future teachers by babying them too much along the way. There's obviously a give and take, and I will help my students as much as they want to be helped. But at the point of college, I expect them to come to me unless there's some crazy extenuating circumstance that obviously is like a cry for help. And then I'm obviously going to go help them. But at some point, like, you need to want this, because teaching is not an easy gig all the time. In high school, it's a little bit different because they got to be there. And I think it's our job to help them get across that finish line. But again, you gotta show me that my help and the work that I'm going to do to help you is going to be appreciated and reciprocated and work back on your part as well.
Yeah, I love that. It's a great answer, and I think it encompasses a lot. And you know, we don't have the time to get into it, but that entire subject is worth exploring. You know, and just how much support is needed from administration, how much support is needed from at home to make it all work. But JB and I are doing what we're doing to do our part to contribute to that. Right.
Yeah.
Let's get some student athletes involved with mentorship programs like ours at whatever age, and let's start getting their mentality shaped to be in a position to learn.
Yeah.
You know, like going back to the idea of like, we want to partner with you on this get recruited idea, right? So I want to help young people who want scholarships to get recruited. But the first thing we're going to teach them is to have the right attitude, right? Without the right attitude, you're going to have a hard time standing out from people who are faster than you. But I want to ask you this, and you gave me the license to this because you said that your dad is brown, right?
Yeah.
And I am brown, and so let's just get right to it. What do you do with the fact that, you know, some people are just genetically faster than other people? Like,
Yeah.
how does your program reconcile that truth?
I'm all ears.
JB said. So the way you reconcile that is you need to be realistic with your expectations, first and foremost, as an athlete, but also as the coach of that athlete, trying to make them faster. And specifically that last word that I just said, make them faster. That's the goal. We're not trying to create world records holders in the 100-meter dash. We're trying to take an athlete who maybe runs a 4.7 and maybe let's shave a 10th off of that and make them help them run a 4.6. Specifically, when it comes to training teams, the fastest kid on the team is always going to probably be the fastest kid on the team. And there's a quote from Carl Frichte, who coaches at Caledonia, who has over, I think, 13 state titles at that school. He said, our goal in Caledonia is not to make the A kids A+ kids. He says we want to make the C kids B kids and the B kids A kids. So figuring out how we can systematically make the slowest kid on the team just a little bit faster. And every time that happens, your team speed increases. So not just, if I was a coach of a football team, I'm not only recording individual team speeds, I'm recording averages throughout the entire season because I want to see the entire speed of the team rise. And if your team is faster than the other team, you're probably going to win. But going back to your original question is understanding that there are always going to be people faster than you. If you're a lineman, you're not going to beat the receiver, but you can you can become faster than you were last season. And that's also what I'm trying to help these students do and what these help these coaches do for their students.
Fact. So you will always be faster than JB. Doesn't matter what.
I'm gonna lock him up on the line. I'm gonna press him, and that 3-step drop is going to be way off. The timing is not going to be there, and I'm gonna pick it, and I'm gonna take it.
Okay. Let me get the security tapes from Monroe State's gym now for all our one-on-one matches.
That was basketball which I didn't play.
Yep. Hey, that's fair. Dillon is 100% faster than me. I have nothing to deny on that, man. He's got
JB will yam on me every day. I'll give him my best shot. I'll meet him at the rim, but it's going to be on my head every time.
Well, shout out to to those friends that when you work out with them, there's just always a step, right? We could be playing a board game, right? And Dillon and I are those type of people. When we're around each other, we get so competitive. And numerous times, blood was drawn on those courts of a lifting warm up. Sorry to use that word there, but we were like, let's go warm up 2 hours later. So one of the missions here at AGB, Dillon, is to normalize insecurities, right? When we get hungry, what do? We want to go eat. When we're tired, we go to sleep, right? When someone strikes insecurity of ours, we have these natural walls of defense. And so I lean on my defensive wall and shame wall. Like I beat up JB, like you're so dumb, what are you doing? Or I get defensive if I feel like maybe they feel like I don't know and I need to, defend myself of like, no, I do know what I'm doing. Um,
Yeah.
how do insecurities play a role in your young adult life now, and then what walls of defense do you kind of lean on, would you say, when someone does strike an insecurity of yours?
Mm, that's a great question. I think one of the things that I have really discovered about myself is I have a desire to be taken seriously.
Hmm.
And I feel like the way I present myself doesn't always allow that to happen. But because I feel like I'm kind of a goofy guy and I like to have fun, and I'm usually one of the highest energy people in the room, and I'm kind of all over the place. And I feel like that is associated with a lack of seriousness,
Hmm.
if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas recently I was talking to one of my friends, Keegan, shout out to Keegan, and he was talking to somebody, and Keegan is like that as well. And he's all over the place, and he's one of the highest energy, most funny dudes that you could imagine. And he said that at one of the lowest points in his life, somebody came to him and he's like, "Man, I can tell that you're really like strong right now," because he was more somber.
Hmm.
And he's like, people, I think, associate somberness with seriousness.
Hmm.
And when he said that, it totally clicked. It's like, if that's what it is, I don't want to be that anymore. I don't want
Hmm.
to be taken seriously if that's what that means. If it means
Love
that I
that.
have to bring down who I am to be taken seriously, like I don't want to do that. So shout out to him for helping me bridge that gap. But also like I feel like at the end of the day, that's just an insecurity. Like I'm 28. I'm just a little bit older than the students that I'm teaching. And it's
Hmm.
like at any moment they're gonna realize that I really don't know that much. But I want them to look at me and be like, that guy knows a lot.
Hmm.
Um, so that has actually been flipped and has made me be like, okay, I need to be 5 books ahead of all these kids all the time. So the desire to be taken seriously has done 2 things. It's helped me realize that maybe that's not really what I want, because then I have to put brakes on who I am, and I don't want to do that. But also to be taken seriously in my field, I need to be publishing stuff. I need to be smarter than my students, and the best way to do that is to ferociously be reading books all the time,
Hmm.
um, and trying to better myself. And as long as I'm doing that, I take myself seriously. And I feel like at the end of the day, if I take myself seriously, the students will, and the people that I'm around myself will as well.
That is one of the
Beautiful, man.
better answers we've ever had to that question. I love that. I learned from that answer and I appreciate it. I think you hearkened on the magic that is the character Ted Lasso. I don't know if you were familiar with that. Have you watched that show? But like that's what's making this character so fascinating to people, because he's completely cheesy. He's completely silly. But he forces you to take him seriously in that capacity.
Mm,
I love the way you say that. Like that, if somber is what it takes to be taken seriously, I don't want it.
yeah.
That Let's make sure we clip that one. That needs to be a reel, because it's so crucial. And as someone who is, a little bit older than you guys, I can tell you that that battle it's ever pervasive. Like this is what it means to get gray hair. It is a constant talk with yourself. Do I get into this cynical space where I just become somber and I already know what's going to happen before it happens because I've been living so long? Or do I stay in this ever curious, ever idealistic, ever belief in the good that's in the world place without apologizing?
Yeah.
And I'm always trying to do that. I don't care how old I get. I want to stay in that space. And that's why I love hanging around JB, or I've made my life
Right.
about impacting young people, because I know the duality of it.
Yeah.
I can share some wisdom, but he shares some enthusiasm that I just eat.
Mm,
I eat alive. So you're doing that for those that are younger than you.
mm,
You give
yeah,
them the wisdom, let them give you the enthusiasm, and just keep it going.
for sure.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Yes, sir. He is, man. Well, I gotta say, Dylan, I appreciate you so much for taking the time with us tonight. But before we do kind of let you go, any shout outs to Get Fast or anything people should be looking out forward? You're gonna have a busy 2024 here, so what should they be looking out for?
Yeah. hopefully in the next 20 days, the whole online certification will be rolling out. It's my goal to, I probably actually shouldn't say that. It's my goal that to have it out in the next 20 days. It's like I said, it's my goal to make self-sufficient speed coaches. Not only is this an online course that I'm doing, but I actually created a whole course at Winona State University that I'll be teaching called Techniques of Speed Coaching Power Development. So it's not just something that I think coaches need. I think so strongly that I'm created a whole course, got it through the whole system that I can teach it to my college kids as well. I think this is something that every school needs. And I just hope that at the end of the day, the AD can make the choice to go ahead and okay that check. And then hopefully that we can go out there and pour into those coaches who can then pour into those athletes and give them the training that those athletes deserve.
Well, before I speak on behalf of a university, what I would say on behalf of as a dad is I'm in, right? I mean, I'm your first customer. I think it's huge to be able to learn those things so that I can teach them to my kid. And so I appreciate you partnering with AGB in that way. We're excited about getting your information out to our crew of people that are so interested in getting better that they can't, and no matter what sport you're playing, you can't do that if you're not willing to get fast.
Right.
So I think we have a natural partnership, and I can't wait to have people consume your product.
Thank you.
Right. Absolutely, man. Dillon's going to be a natural plug into the AGB family. And, as we get out, season 2 begins January 14th. Dillon will be a lovely guest. We'll be getting him in a few of those sessions here on Sunday. So he'll be bringing that energy that you felt here tonight. But, dude, thank you so much. Appreciate you, my guy.
Absolutely. That was so much fun. I can't believe that was an hour.
Yes, sir.